Captain Celine Drake stood at the edge of the bridge, staring out into the vastness of the black void that surrounded her. The stars glimmered like scattered embers, but there was no warmth here, only coldness, the kind that seeped into the soul. She could feel the weight of every decision pressing down on her, the burden of leadership that she had never truly sought. But here she was, leading a rebellion in the deepest fringes of known space. A small fleet of resistance fighters, clinging to hope like drowning men clutching at drifting debris. Her ship, the Elysium, was a battered relic, its hull scarred by decades of skirmishes with the alien empire that had long ago swallowed Earth and countless other worlds. It was a ship built for stealth, its systems designed to slip between the shadows of enemy sensors. In many ways, it mirrored Celine herself, broken, haunted, but still moving forward with purpose. "Captain," came the voice of Lieutenant Riza, her communications officer. He was young, with the wide-eyed optimism of someone who had never seen the galaxy in its full, brutal light. "We've intercepted a transmission. It's encrypted, but we've been able to pull a partial message." Celine turned, her gaze sharp. "What does it say?" Riza hesitated for a moment before replying. "It's from a planet in the sector, one that's under heavy Imperial control. The message is, odd, ma'am. It's short, but it says, 'We know the key to ending it all.'" The words hit Celine like a punch to the gut. A key to ending it all. It could be a weapon. It could be a trap. But one thing was certain. Whoever sent this message knew something. Something that could turn the tide of the war. "Where is this planet?" she asked, already stepping toward the command console. "Far beyond the Empire's patrols. It's remote, nearly unreachable," Reza replied, his fingers flying over the console as he pulled up the map. "But it's a black hole of information. No transmissions have come from there in years. It's as if the Empire has forgotten about it entirely." Celine's mind raced. Could it be a piece of the puzzle? Could the answer to their galaxy-wide enslavement be hidden in some forsaken corner of space? She ran her fingers over the console's surface, a long scar across her palm flaring in memory. The scars of Earth, of everything she had failed to protect. Earth's downfall had been swift, its fall marked by a sudden and brutal invasion that left nothing in its wake but ashes. No one had prepared for it. She hadn't been ready. She hadn't been strong enough. But this message, this sliver of hope, was different. It meant something. It could be the key to reclaiming not just Earth, but every world that had been lost to the Empire's iron grip. The people of the galaxy had been crushed beneath the weight of oppression for far too long. Celine clenched her fist, a flicker of fire lighting in her chest. "Prepare the fleet. We're heading to that planet. It might be a trap, but it's the only lead we've got." A murmur of agreement rippled through the bridge crew, and the tension in the air thickened. Celine didn't know if this would be their salvation or their doom, but she knew one thing. She was going to see this through. She had to. As the Elysium slowly turned and began its journey into the unknown, Celine cast one last glance at the stars, wondering just how far she would have to go to find the freedom they all so desperately needed. The galaxy was in chains, and it was time to break them. The reluctant Liberator was on her way. The Elysium cut through the cold void of space, its engines barely a whisper against the backdrop of the infinite darkness. Celine stood at the helm, her hands gripping the armrests of her command chair as the ship accelerated toward the unknown planet. The tension on the bridge was palpable. Each crew member knew this mission was their last chance. The rebellion had faltered too many times before, each failure more crushing than the last. But this time, there was something different in the air, something they hadn't had in years. Hope. "We're nearing the system, Captain." Riza's voice interrupted her thoughts. His fingers were dancing over the consoles, his eyes flicking back and forth between different readouts. "The planet's atmospheric readings are consistent with the data we've collected. There's a signal, faint but growing stronger. It matches the transmission we intercepted." "Are we alone?" Celine asked, her eyes narrowing as she studied the black void on the view screen. For now, Riza confirmed, no sign of Imperial vessels nearby. But I wouldn't call it safe yet. The Empire could be tracking us, or worse, they might already have a presence on the planet. Celine's jaw tightened. We need to make sure we're the first to arrive. Get us into orbit. As the Elysium dropped out of warp, the planet came into view. It was a desolate world, its surface pockmarked with craters, vast stretches of barren land, and jagged mountain ranges. There was no sign of life in the atmosphere, no bustling cities or bright lights, nothing that suggested civilization had once flourished here. The planet seemed as forgotten as the transmission had implied. "Commence atmospheric entry," Celine ordered. She glanced at her tactical officer, Commander Thorne, who had been uncharacteristically silent for the past hour. Thorne was a seasoned veteran, a fighter with a reputation for his ability to stay calm in the face of the most extreme situations. But today, even he couldn't mask the uncertainty in his eyes. "Captain, I've been scanning the area." Thorne spoke up, his voice low. "There's something wrong here. The Empire may have abandoned the planet, but it's not as empty as it seems." Celine turned to him, her brow furrowing. "What are you seeing?" "High-frequency energy readings, sporadic but steady. It's as if something is emitting energy at an unusually high rate from deep within the planet. It's not natural," Thorne replied, tapping at his console. "There's a pattern. It's almost as if someone is trying to communicate." A chill ran down Celine's spine. A distress signal. "No," Thorne said, shaking his head. "More like a message. But it's directed at us, and it's been there for a long time." The air in the command center thickened with tension. The idea that they weren't the first to discover this planet was unsettling. Celine's mind raced. Who had sent the signal? Was it the same resistance that had fought the Empire in ages past? Or was it something, or someone, else entirely? "We need to investigate. Prepare a landing party," she ordered. "We'll go down there and see who's still trying to reach out. This could be our best chance to get the answers we need." The landing party was small, just the essentials. Celine, Thorne, Riza, and a few trusted soldiers suited up for the descent. The ship's landing bay opened, revealing the barren world below. The ground seemed to stretch endlessly before them, a gray and desolate landscape devoid of anything familiar. As they descended, the planet's surface grew clearer. Celine's heart beat faster in her chest. It wasn't just the barren landscape that unnerved her. It was the eerie silence. No birds, no animals, no wind, just the sound of their own breathing as the shuttle touched down with a low hiss. The moment the shuttle's door opened, a wave of cool, musty air greeted them, carrying with it the scent of long-forgotten decay. Celine felt an unsettling presence, an invisible weight in the air, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. They were not alone. Something watched them. Riza checked his equipment and spoke softly, signals coming from a structure nearby. "It looks old, but intact." Celine's gaze hardened. "Let's move out. Keep your eyes open." The first step they took onto the alien soil felt like an intrusion, a trespass into a place where they were not meant to be. But Celine had no choice. Not now. They moved forward, stepping into the unknown, toward the heart of the mystery that could either save the galaxy or damn them all. The journey had only just begun, and already the shadow of danger loomed large. The Empire's watchful eyes may have been far away, but the ghosts of this forgotten world had a story to tell, and Celine was determined to hear it. The barren world stretched out before Celine and her team like a vast, haunting canvas. The shuttle's engines hummed quietly as they made their way through the desolate landscape, their footsteps crunching against the gray dust that coated everything. There was an eerie stillness in the air, as if the planet itself had long since given up on its inhabitants, and yet something pulsed beneath the surface, a hidden energy that urged them forward. The signal they were tracking led them to a crumbled structure, its stone walls half destroyed by time and neglect. What was once a sprawling city had long since been reduced to nothing more than broken ruins. The skeletal remains of buildings reached toward the sky, like the outstretched arms of the dead, some still holding fragments of what they once were. Statues, faded banners, and pieces of old technology scattered about. As Celine and her team approached the ruins, she could see faint signs of a struggle. The ground was littered with debris, charred markings from blaster fire, and scorch marks that suggested an attack, one that had happened long ago. But there was no sign of bodies, no evidence of those who had fought. It was as though they had simply vanished, erased from history. Thorn crouched beside a shattered console, his fingers tracing over the surface, and a frown tugged at his lips. This technology is ancient, but it's unlike anything I've seen before. It's as if they were trying to send a message, or perhaps something else entirely. Riza, ever the optimist, turned to Celine with a gleam in his eye. "Do you think this could be the resistance, Captain? The ones who were rumored to have stood against the Empire?" Celine's gaze swept across the ruins, her heart heavy with doubt. "I want to believe it, but something about this place feels wrong. These ruins aren't just abandoned. They've been erased, deliberately hidden from the galaxy's memory. Whoever did this, they didn't just want to suppress a rebellion. They wanted to erase it from history entirely." There was a chill in her words, a coldness that was not just the planet's atmosphere, but something deeper, more personal. She had seen this before, the Empire's cruelty, its willingness to obliterate entire civilizations to maintain its control. Celine clenched her fists, her mind flashing back to the fall of Earth. Her home, her people, they had been silenced, just like this. The team moved deeper into the ruins, the air thick with dust, and the scent of decay. They reached what appeared to be the remains of a large building, a temple, perhaps, or a command center, its entrance flanked by statues of alien figures, their faces long since weathered and worn. Celine took a cautious step forward, her hand instinctively going to the hilt of her sidearm. "We need to be careful," Thorn warned, his voice low. "There's something off about this place. I can feel it." Celine nodded, her instincts telling her that they weren't alone. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up as she scanned the surroundings, every crack in the stone, every shadow beneath the fallen walls. The planet's silence was deafening, almost oppressive. It was as though they had entered a tomb, a place where hope had once thrived, and now lay buried, forgotten by all but the dead. As they entered the building, the flicker of ancient lights overhead flickered on, casting long shadows across the chamber. The walls were lined with faded murals depicting a great struggle, alien warriors standing against a vast, faceless enemy, their weapons raised in defiance. But the final image in the mural was the most unsettling. It showed the warriors falling, one by one, their bodies slumped in defeat as an endless tide of Imperial forces poured over them. Celine stepped closer to the mural, her breath catching in her throat. The faces of the fallen warriors were obscured, but their armor, distinctive, yet similar to the designs used by ancient rebel factions, was unmistakable. This was no ordinary resistance. This was something far greater, something that had been quashed in the most brutal way possible. "What happened here?" Riza whispered, his voice barely audible. Celine's eyes narrowed. "I think we're about to find out." She motioned for the team to follow her as she approached a darkened doorway at the back of the room. There was a strange, pulsing light emanating from beyond, the same energy they had detected earlier. It felt like a beacon. No, a warning. As they passed through the doorway, they entered a chamber that appeared to be a command center of sorts. Strange alien symbols covered the walls, and in the center of the room, a massive stone pedestal stood, illuminated by a soft, greenish glow. On the pedestal lay a device, small, circular, and adorned with intricate markings. It pulsed with energy, as if it were alive. Riza stepped forward, his fingers itching to touch the device, but Celine held him back. "Wait," she said, her voice steady but firm. "This could be a trap. We don't know what this is or what it's capable of. But as they stood there, studying the device, Celine couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something monumental. Whatever this device was, it held the secrets of the past, and possibly the key to the galaxy's future. The silence in the chamber was thick, oppressive, as Celine stood just a few steps from the glowing pedestal. The strange device in the center pulsed rhythmically, its greenish light casting strange shadows across the room. Despite the eerie atmosphere, Celine couldn't shake the sense that this was more than a trap. There was a strange pull, a beckoning energy, almost like the whispers of the past calling her forward. "We can't just stand here," Reza said, his voice barely a whisper, as though the very air of the room might react to his words. His eyes were fixed on the device, and for a moment it was clear that his curiosity was overpowering any sense of caution. "Captain, this could be the key to everything we've been fighting for. The resistance, the rebellion, the entire struggle against the Empire. It could all be tied to this." "I know," Celine murmured. She took a slow, measured step forward, the others watching her every movement. "But we don't know what it is yet, Reza. We can't risk it without understanding it first." Thorn, ever the pragmatist, stepped to her side. "Captain's right. We need to approach this carefully. No matter how important it is, it could be a trap set by the Empire to lure us in, or worse, something far more dangerous." Celine nodded, turning her gaze back to the glowing device. There was no way to tell what it was meant to do, but the markings on its surface seemed almost familiar, like something she had seen once in ancient Earth texts. It was a strange blend of old alien symbols and technology, far beyond what the Empire had ever used. Or so she thought. She didn't trust it, but she couldn't walk away from it either. Not when it could be their salvation. After a long, tense moment, Celine motioned for Reza to approach cautiously. "Check for any triggers or security systems. Thorn, keep watch. We're not alone here." The lieutenant hesitated before nodding. He pulled out a small scanner from his belt and started to sweep it over the device, his eyes scanning the readings as his brow furrowed. "No signs of immediate traps," he muttered, though there was a trace of doubt in his voice. "But something's definitely wrong. The energy readings are too organized, too precise." "Could it be active?" Celine asked. "I can't tell. It's like there's some kind of encryption or energy shield over it. We might need to access the core of the device to find out what it really does." Celine took a deep breath. There was no way around it. If they were going to unlock whatever this was, they had to take the next step. They were standing on the threshold of something monumental, something that could change the course of the entire war. She just prayed they weren't making a grave mistake. "Proceed carefully," Celine ordered. Reza's fingers hovered over the device, carefully pressing a series of hidden panels. As his fingers made contact, the room seemed to hum with a low vibration, and the green glow of the pedestal intensified, casting an eerie light on the walls. For a moment, Celine could have sworn the symbols on the device began to shift, rearranging themselves as though reacting to his touch. Suddenly, the device let out a sharp, almost metallic screech, and a holographic projection erupted from the top, casting a soft blue glow that illuminated the chamber. A figure appeared within the light, but it wasn't human. The figure was tall, thin, with elongated features and eyes that seemed to shimmer like liquid silver. The alien being looked as though it were made of light, its form flickering as it spoke in a language that was completely unfamiliar to them. Thorn cursed under his breath, stepping back. What in the galaxy? Celine's heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't understand the language, but there was no mistaking the tone. It was urgent, desperate. This was not a message of peace or diplomacy. The alien figure's eyes locked onto her with an intensity that sent a chill down her spine. And then, as if the figure had been waiting for a response, it spoke again, this time in a language that was more familiar, albeit broken, distorted by whatever technology had transmitted it. The voice that emerged was faint but clear. "You are not supposed to find this. You were not meant to see this, but you are." Here, you must stop them. Stop the end they are bringing. The war, the weapon, the silence. You are the last hope. The message ended abruptly, and the hologram flickered, then vanished, leaving only a lingering, pulsating light from the device. Riza stared at the pedestal, his breath shallow. That was a warning. A warning of what? Celine asked, her voice steady, but inside, her mind was racing. Who was that? Thorn glanced around the chamber, as if expecting something to jump out at them. I don't know, Captain, but it sounds like the Empire's secret weapon, something they've been hiding for centuries. And whatever it is, it's far worse than we thought. Celine's mind raced. The last hope, the last chance to stop the Empire. Whoever had left this message had understood the stakes. They had left this device behind, hidden for centuries, waiting for someone to uncover it. We need to find out more, she said, her voice hardening with resolve. Whatever this is, it's our only lead. The Empire's weapon. We have to stop it before it's too late. The tension in the chamber thickened as Celine's words settled in. The flickering remnants of the alien's warning echoed in her mind, drowning out the surrounding stillness. You are the last hope. The weight of those words hung heavily over her and her team. If this device truly held the key to stopping the Empire's weapon, whatever it was, they had to unlock it, and quickly. Riza, still standing by the pedestal, turned to Celine with a look of determination. We have to get this back to the fleet. This could change everything. I agree, Celine replied, her eyes still fixed on the pedestal. But we need to be prepared. Whatever's waiting for us here, whatever the Empire is hiding, it's not going to let us leave easily. Thorn, who had been scanning the room for any signs of movement, spoke up. I'm picking up strange energy readings in the vicinity. They're faint, but there's something here. It's like we've disturbed a hornet's nest. Celine's pulse quickened. Could be a monitoring system. If the Empire left this behind, they're not going to let anyone access it without a fight. Then we'll be ready, Reza said, pulling his blaster from its holster. Let's move. With that, the team made their way cautiously toward the exit, the device now safely secured in a sealed container by Thorn's side. They moved through the darkened ruins, every shadow feeling like an enemy, every distant creak and groan of the crumbling stone amplifying the sense of dread that gnawed at their nerves. The air outside the chamber felt heavier, colder, as if the very atmosphere of the planet had grown more oppressive since they arrived. Celine squinted into the distance, her mind whirling with possibilities. The Empire had been quiet for far too long. What had they been hiding all this time? And why had they let this place remain untouched for so many years? Do you think the Empire knew this place existed? Riza asked, keeping pace beside her. I don't think they ever expected anyone to find it, Celine replied, her voice low. But now that we have, we've probably just signed our own death warrants. As they made their way back to the shuttle, the hairs on the back of Celine's neck stood up again. There was a strange hum in the air, barely perceptible at first, but growing louder, like the distant roar of a gathering storm. Captain, Thorn warned, his voice tight with tension. We've got company. Celine spun around, her eyes narrowing as a dark shape emerged from the horizon. A sleek, black craft with sharp, angular lines cut through the atmosphere at breakneck speed, its engines roaring as it descended toward them. It was too fast, too precise. This wasn't a random patrol. Whoever was in that ship had been waiting for them. Move, Celine barked, her instincts kicking in as she sprinted toward the shuttle. Get to the ship now. The team followed her without hesitation, their boots pounding against the rocky ground. As they reached the shuttle, the ship's hatch swung open, and the team scrambled inside, the door sealing behind them with a sharp hiss. Celine wasted no time in powering up the shuttle's engines. Hold on, she muttered, pushing the controls forward as the ship leaped into the air. The black craft was closing in fast, its weapons primed. Thorn, Riza, "Get to the rear turret," Celine ordered, her voice calm despite the rising chaos. "We're not going down without a fight." A loud crash reverberated through the shuttle as the first shot from the pursuing ship struck the hull, sending a shockwave through the cabin. Warning lights flashed on the control panel, and the ship's shield indicators dropped to critical levels. "Captain," Riza shouted from the rear, "we can't outrun them. We need to fight back." "Working on it," Celine replied, gritting her teeth as she veered the shuttle into a sharp turn, narrowly avoiding another blast. The pursuing ship was fast, agile, and relentless, its blasters tearing through the air with precision. Thorn cursed under his breath as he fired back, his shots glancing off the enemy ship's shield. "These shields are too strong. We need a weak spot." Celine's mind raced, calculating their options. The shuttle wasn't built for a full-scale dogfight, but it had one advantage: the terrain of the planet. A plan began to form in her mind, a risky maneuver that could give them the upper hand. "We don't need to outgun them," she said, her voice steady. "We just need to survive long enough to make a jump to the asteroid belt. That's where we'll lose them." Riza's voice came over the comms, disbelief in his tone. "Are you serious? The asteroid belt? That's suicide." "Trust me," Celine replied, her eyes locked on the oncoming ship. "It's our only shot." With a quick flick of her wrist, Celine piloted the shuttle into a steep dive, angling it toward the planet's surface. The enemy ship followed, closing in. As they neared the surface, Celine abruptly pulled up, sending the shuttle into a sharp climb. The pursuing ship was too focused on the attack to realize her intention, until it was too late. The shuttle dove through the chaotic maze of the planet's rocky surface, threading between jagged cliffs and narrow canyons. The enemy ship struggled to keep up, its superior speed giving it no advantage in the winding terrain. "We've almost got them," Thorn shouted, a grim smile on his face as he fired another round. This time, his shots found their mark, striking the enemy craft's engine. The black ship shuddered, its engine sputtering as it lost power. Celine gave a sharp nod. Now, with one last burst of speed, she veered toward the asteroid belt, the enemy ship falling further behind. They were still alive, for now. But Celine knew this was only the beginning. Whatever the Empire was hiding, whatever the device contained, they weren't going to let it go so easily. They had unleashed something far darker than they had anticipated. The shuttle's engines hummed steadily as it coasted into the asteroid belt. Celine breathed a sigh of relief, her hands gripping the controls as the chaos of the pursuit seemed to momentarily fall away. The harsh, craggy landscape of the belt surrounded them, a vast expanse of floating rock and debris, perfect for losing a tail. But Celine knew better than to let her guard down. This was just the beginning of their real challenge. Behind them, the enemy ship had dropped out of pursuit, likely suffering serious damage to its engines. But that wouldn't last long. The Empire had resources. They would be back, and in greater numbers. "We're not out of the woods yet," Celine muttered, scanning the radar for any signs of additional ships. "We need to find a place to hide, something they won't be able to track." Riza, who had been silent since the chase, finally spoke up. "Captain, that message we received, do you think it could be a trap? Maybe this was all part of the Empire's plan to draw us in." Celine shook her head, her eyes never leaving the controls. "I don't know, Riza, but the message was clear. Whatever the Empire is hiding, it's something we can't ignore. If it's a trap, they've done a hell of a job making it seem like we're the ones who stumbled onto it. Either way, we can't go back. We need to keep moving forward." Thorn, sitting beside Celine in the cockpit, turned to her with a concerned look. "I've been analyzing the data from the device we found. The readings are strange. It's like there's something embedded in the code, something beyond even the technology we've encountered." Celine raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What are you getting at?" Thorn's voice lowered. "I think it might be some sort of map. Not just to this planet or the device, but something bigger. A network of hidden locations, perhaps. It could lead us to the Empire's true weapon, or worse, to their base of operations. That's what I'm afraid of, Celine said. We don't know what we're walking into. We could be uncovering more than just their weapon. We could be walking right into their heart. Then let's take the fight to them, Reza said, his voice hardening with resolve. We've survived their first attack. We can survive whatever comes next. Celine considered his words for a moment. He was right about one thing. They had survived the first wave, but they were playing a dangerous game. They were deep in enemy territory now, with no idea what the Empire had planned for them. The device they had uncovered might hold the answers they needed, but unlocking it could bring unforeseen consequences. They couldn't afford to make a mistake. We'll have to move cautiously, Celine said finally, her mind made up. First, we need to contact the fleet. They'll need to know what we've found and where we're going. We'll need reinforcements if we're going to get to the bottom of this. I'll patch us through, Thorne said, his fingers already moving over the console. The communications array was still functional, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as the console buzzed to life. He connected with the fleet's command center, sending the coordinates and data they had gathered so far. This is Celine of the Eclipse, calling for immediate assistance. Celine's voice was calm but firm as she spoke into the comm. We've uncovered something of major importance, a hidden device with potential ties to the Empire's secret weapon. We need support, extraction, and full analysis. We're currently in the asteroid belt, coordinates attached. We'll hold position until you arrive. The comm crackled. Then a voice came through, one Celine recognized immediately. Captain Mira's voice was steady, even though Celine could hear the urgency in her tone. Captain Celine, we're receiving your transmission. Stand by for confirmation. We'll send a recon team your way as soon as possible. Be advised, we're tracking unusual activity in the sector. Keep your eyes peeled. We don't know what's waiting for you. Understood, Celine replied. We'll stay put for now. But be quick. We're not alone out here. As the comms went quiet, Reza leaned forward, his eyes scanning the asteroid field. We've bought ourselves a little time, but not much. They'll be on us soon. Celine's jaw tightened. They couldn't afford to be discovered. The asteroid field was their only real advantage now. They needed to be invisible, to become nothing more than a ghost in the shadows. But even in this dead zone of space, with its debris and shifting rocks, Celine knew the Empire's reach was vast. They could find them. They would find them. But as she sat back in her chair, something nagged at her. A sense of foreboding she couldn't shake. It wasn't just the enemy. It was the device they had uncovered. The alien message had been clear. You are the last hope. And the more Celine thought about it, the more she realized that the message hadn't just been a warning. It was a call to action. The universe was on the brink, and they were the only ones who had a chance of stopping it. We're going to make it through this, she said, more to herself than anyone else. But we have to be ready for whatever comes next. The shuttle drifted quietly among the asteroids, their temporary haven in a universe that was closing in around them. The Empire would come. The dark secrets of the device would reveal themselves. But Celine wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. And as the first distant rumble of enemy engines reached her ears, Celine knew the real fight was just beginning. The asteroid field stretched endlessly before them, a maze of rocky obstacles that could easily become a graveyard for the unprepared. Celine gripped the shuttle's controls, her fingers tapping the console as she fought to keep her focus sharp. Every second that passed felt like a countdown to disaster. The fleet was coming, but they had no idea what kind of storm was brewing out here. The device in their possession could be the key to unraveling the Empire's secrets, but it could just as easily be their undoing. Anything yet, Thorne? Celine asked, her voice calm but tight with tension. Thorne's eyes flickered over the data feeds, his brow furrowed. Still nothing on my end, but something's off. The readings we've been picking up don't match anything we've encountered before. It's almost like the asteroid field itself is interfering with our sensors. Celine's heart skipped a beat. Interfering how? It's hard to say, Thorn replied, tapping a few more keys. It's like there's an energy source hidden deep within the field. It's faint, but it's constant, like it's watching us. Riza, standing at the rear of the shuttle, tightened his grip on his blaster. You're saying we're being tracked, even out here? Possibly, Thorn replied, his voice tinged with uncertainty. It's a long shot, but we might be under surveillance. Celine's eyes darted to the dark expanse outside the shuttle. Her instincts screamed at her that they weren't alone. Get ready, she ordered. We need to stay sharp. Whatever this is, we can't afford to be caught off guard. Her pulse quickened as the comm system buzzed to life. A crackling voice came through, sharp and urgent. Eclipse to Captain Celine. Do you copy? Captain Mira's voice echoed in the shuttle speakers. We're tracking unusual energy signatures in your area. Stay in your position. Don't engage until we arrive. We've noticed it too, Celine replied quickly. We'll stay put, but we can't guarantee we'll remain undetected. If you're coming, be quick. We're en route. Hold tight. ETA, 10 minutes. Celine disconnected the comm, her mind racing. 10 minutes was an eternity in this kind of space. They were sitting ducks, and if the Empire's forces were already in the area, they might not make it that long. Riza, Celine said, turning toward him, can you get a better raid on our surroundings from the rear? I need to know if we're being followed or if this is just interference. Riza nodded, his eyes narrowing as he adjusted the shuttle's rear scanners. He remained silent for a moment, scanning the field with intense focus. Then his voice came low but urgent. Captain, there's something there. Celine's heart stopped for a second. What do you mean, something? Riza pointed toward the asteroid field on the monitor. A ship. It's not the same as before. Smaller, but heavily armed. It's moving fast, and it's on an intercept course. It's got us locked in. Damn it, Celine muttered under her breath, slamming her fist against the console. How did they find us so quickly? They must have had the coordinates from the ship we encountered earlier, Thorn offered. Or maybe they've been tracking us from the moment we arrived on the planet. Celine's mind raced as she calculated their dwindling options. They couldn't outrun the ship, not with their limited fuel, and they couldn't risk a full-blown engagement in the heart of an asteroid field. The Empire was no doubt aware of the shuttle's location by now, and whatever they had planned, it wouldn't be long before they arrived in full force. Her gaze flicked to the blinking display, showing the coordinates of the asteroid field. There's a small, uncharted moon in this sector, she said, her voice steady despite the growing pressure. We'll head there, make a hard landing. It'll give us cover and buy us time. We can't outrun them forever, Reza replied. We'll be surrounded. We don't need to outrun them, Celine said with a fierce determination. We just need to survive long enough for the fleet to arrive. Thorn's fingers flew over the console as he adjusted their course. I've got the coordinates locked. Initiating evasive maneuvers now. The shuttle jolted as Celine executed a sharp turn, veering away from the oncoming enemy ship. The asteroid field around them erupted into chaotic movement as rocks and debris collided, creating an unpredictable landscape that would work to their advantage. Celine's heart pounded in her chest as she wove the shuttle between the jagged rocks, narrowly avoiding obstacles while trying to put distance between them and their pursuers. Behind them, the enemy ship mirrored their movements, relentless in its pursuit. Hold tight, Celine barked, gritting her teeth as she pushed the shuttle's engines to their limit. Riza's voice came through the comms, his tone tight with anxiety. We've got incoming fire, Captain. Shields are holding, but just barely. Celine could hear the faint hum of the shuttle's shields absorbing the enemy shots, but each impact sent a shudder through the hull. They were running out of time, and Celine knew the fleet's arrival was their only hope. We're almost there, Celine muttered, her voice steely. Just a little longer. As they neared the moon's surface, a massive shadow appeared on the horizon. The enemy ship was closing in fast, its guns powered up for another strike. But Celine had one more trick up her sleeve. With a sharp turn, she nosed the shuttle downward, sending it plummeting toward the surface of the moon. The planet's atmosphere would provide them with just enough cover to make a crash landing. If they could make it there alive. "We're not done yet," Celine whispered to herself. "We're just getting started." The shuttle plummeted toward the moon's surface, the screech of its strained engines slicing through the comms. Celine's hands were steady on the controls, her mind laser-focused as she fought to keep the craft intact. Every instinct screamed at her to pull up, to escape, but she couldn't. The moon was their only chance. If they didn't make it there, they were dead. "Hold on," Celine shouted, her voice barely cutting through the chaos as the shuttle careened through the moon's upper atmosphere. The shuttle's hull groaned and rattled under the stress, but Celine kept her foot pressed firmly to the accelerator, pulling every ounce of power from the engines to push through the freefall. Behind them, the enemy ship followed suit, relentless in its pursuit. It fired a barrage of energy blasts that sliced through the air, missing the shuttle by mere inches. The shields absorbed the blasts, but each strike chipped away at their already dwindling power reserves. "Shields are at 20%, Thorne shouted, his face pale with worry. "If we take another hit, we're done for. We need to get down now," Celine replied, her voice tight with determination. "Trust me, just a little more." The rocky landscape of the moon loomed below them. The surface was dotted with craters and jagged cliffs, perfect for hiding. The problem was getting there alive. Celine's gaze darted to the radar. The enemy ship was closing in fast. It wouldn't be long before they fired again. Riza gritted his teeth. "We're running out of options." "Not yet," Celine replied through clenched teeth. "We'll make it." With a final, desperate push, Celine yanked the controls upward, pulling the shuttle into a steep dive. The planet's surface grew larger, faster. Just as the shuttle hit a violent gust of wind, shaking the craft like a toy, Celine angled the shuttle's nose down sharply, aiming for a narrow valley between two towering cliffs. The shuttle screamed as it descended, the sound of alarms ringing in their ears, the ground approaching with terrifying speed. The valley was closing in too fast, and Celine's stomach tightened with the realization that they couldn't afford a misstep. One wrong move, and they would be crushed under the shuttle's weight. The enemy ship followed them down, firing relentlessly, but Celine kept her focus, trusting her instincts. "This is it," she yelled. With a final, ear-splitting impact, the shuttle slammed into the surface of the moon, sending shockwaves through the cockpit. The craft bounced and skidded across the rocky ground, sparks flying, but somehow it held together. The shuttle finally came to a grinding halt, coming to rest against a cluster of jagged rocks. For a moment, there was silence, just the sound of ragged breathing as the crew slowly processed what had just happened. The shuttle was badly damaged, but they were alive. Celine exhaled slowly, her knuckles white from gripping the controls so tightly. She glanced over at her crew, who were still catching their breath. "We made it," Thorne said, his voice almost a whisper. He seemed dazed, as if still coming to terms with their survival. "Not yet," Celine replied, her gaze shifting back to the monitor. "We're still not out of this." The enemy ship hovered above the valley, now beginning its descent. It was damaged, but it was still a formidable threat. Their time was running out, and the fleet was still too far away to be of any immediate help. "We've got no choice," Celine said, turning to her crew. "We're going to have to fight." Riza grabbed his blaster from the seat beside him. "We're not going down without a fight, Captain." Celine's eyes hardened. "No, we're not. But we'll do it on our terms." Thorne pulled up a new set of schematics on the console. "There's a nearby canyon, just a few kilometers from here. If we can make it there, we might be able to set up an ambush. The terrain's rough, and it'll give us cover." "Good," Celine said, nodding. We use the canyon to our advantage. We set up traps, create a few surprises for our friends up there. We make them think we're dead and buried. Then we strike when they least expect it. Riza grinned. Sounds like a plan. Celine's pulse quickened, adrenaline flooding her system. The fear was still there, gnawing at her insides, but it was drowned out by a fiercer, more powerful emotion: determination. They had come this far. They had fought for every inch of ground, and they were not going to let this be their end. Not now. The canyon was their final chance. If they could make it there, they could turn the tables. But they had to act fast. Celine stood up and strapped on her blaster, her eyes scanning the rocky landscape outside the shuttle. We move now. Stick together. Keep your heads low. We don't let them see us until it's too late. Thorn, Riza, and Celine made their way out of the shuttle, weapons drawn. They had one last chance. It was all or nothing. As they moved toward the canyon, the enemy ship above them began its final descent. Celine steeled herself. The Empire had underestimated them once before. Now, they would learn just how much they had to fear. This was their fight, and they would not lose.